Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. I'll just switch that light on. I hope you're all well. I just thought I'd pop by and do a video. I'm actually recording this in the evening of Wednesday evening. I've had a busy day and not had much chance during the day to create. So my husband's watching the football, so I thought, why not come and create a quick card? It's been a busy day today. We had a new front door fitted. So it's been quite busy and I've been sweeping and cleaning, so it's a nice change just to create a nice simple card. Now I'm not going to create anything too complicated, excuse me, anything too complicated. I'm going to create something nice and simple, just in case you're having one of those days where you don't feel too creative, you want to create something but you don't want to do something that's too overcomplicated or takes too much thought. So what I wanted to do was just use inks. I didn't want to use any complicated products or anything like that, just to try and keep it as simple as possible. So I'm just grabbing myself a piece of kitchen roll because I'm going to use some inks. Oh, I didn't rip that very well. And what I'm doing is I'm creating a DL card. You know that I create a lot of the DL cards, and it's just another favourite size that I like using. So, and DL normally means double length. Sometimes I make it longer. So this is 3.5 inches in width and that's 7 inches in length. So it's double length. But sometimes I do 3.5 inches by 8, just to confuse matters. But yes, it's sort of a long card anyway. So this is a DL card. So it's double length. So 3.5 inches by 7 inches. And it's Pink Frog smooth card. And what I'm going to do is I'm using a piece of kitchen roll just so that I don't get my paw prints on there, just to rest my hand on. And what I want to do is not create, I don't want to create anything that's got too many colours. I'm just occupying half an hour or so to create a card because I love creating. But sometimes it doesn't always have to be about lots of products, lots of layers or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin with Vintage Photo Distress Oxide, and I'm using my brayer, and I keep one of my brayers for my inks, and then I keep another brayer. I've got 2 other brayers that I keep for paints. So this is the one I'm going to use for inks. Now my Vintage Photo Distress Oxide is a well-used ink pad. So I'm going to have to make sure that I get a good layer of that ink on there. Can you see I'm getting a good layer? Can you also see that I've not sort of gone to the edges? I'm just avoiding the edges just for this card. I'm just applying it sort of in the central area. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this ink to my card, and I'm using sort of a flicking motion. So I'm not rolling across the card like that. I'm sort of flicking it across, lifting and flicking. So flick, lift, flick, lift, flick, lift. So I'm flicking it each time. And you can still see there's a fair bit of ink on there. And you've got some ink on your non-stick craft sheet. So you can keep applying that ink. You can keep going down and applying that ink. I'm then going to add some more ink to my brayer, and what I'm going to do is turn my card around, use my kitchen roll just so that I don't put my paw prints on there again, and I'm just going to brayer that card. And have you noticed I also keep going over the same area over and over again? One, because there's ink still on there, because the oxide ink stays wetter longer, because it's a pigment dye fusion, and because of that pigment element, it's got an opaque element to it, so the colours layer beautifully. But because I've also got ink on my non-stick craft sheet, it will continue to add colour as I'm brayering. So as you can see, I'm getting a nice blend. So I'm just going to add a little bit more again. And again, I'm going to start off the edge initially, so started off the edge initially, and then bringing some of the darker colour down. So I started with, so I'm actually doing it quite fast now because I'm used to flicking and lifting. So what I'm doing is I'm taking that oxide ink, first of all, my first layer, apply it to the edge, and then come further into the card, just so we get a little bit more of that darkness down the card. And don't just do it once, do it several times to add that layer of colour. Just to add that layer, and you're building up the depth of colour. Let me just lift that. You're just building up the depth of colour. So I'm going to continue again. Again, start at the edge, and then come down into the card, just so that it's a little bit darker. If you start straight away with the brayer straight into the centre of the card, sometimes it's not as easy to move some of those lines. But I must admit, these inks, they do blend beautifully. So turn your card over, get rid of the first layer of ink at the edge, and then come in more into the centre. And you have to brayer over several times to blend that colour, okay? So we've got a nice, beautiful layer with the inks. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab some of the ground espresso. So I'm going to take some of that colour. Now this is obviously a darker shade. And what I'm going to do is apply that just around the edges of my card. So what you can do is just apply it to the edges. Pick up a little bit more of the ink, like so. Start off here and then come in to the edges of your card. So just come in to the edges of your card. So pick up that ink. You've got the ink. Start up here, away from your card, and then drag it in to your card. Drag it in to the card. There we go. So we've got a nice blended, beautiful colour. If you wanted, you could also use another piece of card. Let's just grab another piece of card. Let's just move this one out of the way. And what you could do is you can spritz this ink that you've added with your brayer and just mop up that ink. There is plenty of ink on there to mop up. So we'll get a second piece of card because we can mop all this ink up. You don't want to just waste the ink. It seems a shame not to mop that ink up. Okay. So you've just mopped those bits up. Then what you're going to do, you've just got a little bit of ink left. So you're going to spritz that with water. So it's just the bare minimums that is of ink that is left. And what you're going to do is touch your card in the water. Just touch it in the water. Just touch it. Just add those blobs of ink. So what you can do then, you've added then, because you've then touched that card with the ink, some of that ink will transfer onto the non-stick craft sheet. So pick it up with your spare pieces of card, because then you can create several backgrounds at the same time. So just use your spare pieces of card just to mop up. It just means you create a couple of backgrounds at the same time. Let's just mop that up. And what we've got is we've got a lovely, rich, very vintage card. Okay, so we're not going to do anything with that at the moment. And then what I'm going to do, let me just grab, just want to see if, like, oh, where's my, why is it when you, this, the one stamp that you want? just want to see if my text stamp will react with the water. It might not react as much now because we've already added water. But what I'm going to do is add some water to my non-stick craft sheet. Use it like an ink pad. Just press this text stamp onto the background, which is going to struggle to stick because I've got the water on there. Let's just use it with our fingers. And now we've got moisture on that text stamp. Just want to see if it'll start to react. So just pick up the moisture, the water, with your text stamp and then just add it to the background. Okay, just pick up the water. You sort of dab in it so that you've got bits of water. You're not going for a perfect background when you're stamping with water. You're just going for a look to create a background. Always trying to give you different ideas to use in your background. Now, what you have to remember with this is because you're using water, you need to give it time to react. There's no point rushing and expecting something to react too quickly. Also, you know, we added moisture to the card initially, but we're just adding to those layers. And the idea is you're not meant to read, it's just meant to add to the layers to that background. Okay, I'm just going to lift this up just so that you can... Right, let's just dry that because I've got moisture everywhere. Let me just see if we can get this. It's just so that you can see in the background that that text is just taking on the effect of adding some texture to the background. So what I'm going to do is just grab my heat tool. Now, what you want to do is you want to give as much time as possible for that to react. You want to give it plenty of time. You don't want to rush it. Obviously, I'm going to force dry it, but I will have some effect in the background. But if you let it dry naturally, you will have a better effect. So I'm just going to dry that now. Just heat my heat tool up. I'm just going to dry that ink. If you let it dry naturally, you'll get a better effect. But obviously I'm not letting it dry naturally. I could have had one done before, but I'm doing it real time. So I haven't got one that's dried naturally. But drying naturally is always the best. Turn your card over just to dry the reverse as well. And it doesn't matter how much you dry that card, there'll still be some moisture in there that is in the fibres. So always drying naturally is obviously the best thing. And just dab that now. Just turn it over one more time. There we go. What I'm trying to show is that you don't have to have too many products to create a lovely background. So that's with stamping with the text in the background. You're not reading text, you're just getting like a background from it. We know there's something there just from that text stamp. So that creates sort of a background for us. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the ground espresso, because I don't want to use too many products, just as few products as possible. So I'm going to use the ground espresso, and I'm going to add some stamping over the top, just to give me another layer. Now let me see if I can see that. Just checking that you're actually, because sometimes it's difficult to see on camera the effect. So that's why I have to give close-ups, because sometimes in the flesh it's a lot better than it is on camera. So just inking that up. Well, now when I'm just creating a background like this, it's not a problem going like this on the stamp. More often than not, I always go like this, because you can flood the stamp with ink. When you're just creating a background, it's not so detrimental, but when you want pristine stamping, always take the ink to the stamp and not the other way round. So just, I will lift this up so that you can see, just to make it a little bit easier. What I'm doing is I'm building layers without adding bulk. So let me see if you can see, there we go. You can see the text in the background there. So I'm adding layers without adding bulk to the card, just so that you can see that. And honestly, sometimes in the flesh, it just looks gorgeous, and it's sometimes very difficult to capture in camera. Right, I'm now going to take a little bit of black ink and just add a touch of black ink, just to build. So what I'm doing is I'm building the depth from the base up. So now I'm going to add little bits of black stamping, just to build that depth. I love vintage makes, and vintage makes don't have to be boring. They can still be interesting, and they can still have layers and texture, and you don't necessarily have to have too much bulk either. And we're not going to go for a card that's too overcomplicated. Down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah. So now you've got the darker stamping. So what we've done is we've built depth. As if you were craning with pencils, I'm creating depth with ink pads by adding layers of colour. So, and I've still got that watermark in the background, so that adds interest as well. So just while that rests a moment, we'll get our other stamp. Let's just move this out of the moment, just out of the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the worded petals. I never tire of this stamp. I just love it. So I want some spare card, which I've just used to ink on. Of course, the card I use, let's see, that would make another card. I'm terrible. If I can make another card out of something, I don't like to rip it up. So what I'm going to do is just clean my hands, mainly because I've picked that text stamp up, and you can easily get a little bit of black ink just on your fingers. Just grab, will that fit on an A7? Yep, so I can use my A7 acrylic block. And just give that a really good inking. Just make sure it's inked properly. And now I always put a date on my ink pad, just so I know how long I've been using the ink for, and I can just keep a check on how long the ink pad's lasting me. I use my ink pads most days, so I do have to exchange frequently, or if you're one of those people that likes re-inking, I do have to change quite frequently because I'm using them all the time. There we go, there's our flower. And what I'm going to do, rather than colour it first, I'm actually going to cut it out. Mainly because if I ink it, because I'm going to add moisture, if I do that, then I'm going to be cutting out something that's got moisture in it. And because it's got moisture in it, it means that it will be a lot harder to cut out. So I'm cutting out first. If you're not using moisture, then you can colour, then cut out. But because I'm going to add moisture to this, see, and while I'm creating this, I'm always thinking, oh, I've got such and such in my drawer. I am terrible. I'm always thinking, you're supposed to be keeping it simple, Tracy. But the amount of times I go off on tangents, I say, oh, keep it simple. So I have to keep convincing myself not to go and get something else out of the drawer. And keep it simple. And I do like to mix it up a little bit. You know, going from layered cards, mixed media, journal to cards as well. Just to mix it up a little bit. There we go. That's it. So what I'm thinking is this flower is going to go on here, and I'm not going to add too much detail. I'm just going to keep a simple flower, but I want to add a pop of colour. So I'm going to get my water brush. I can't get the lid off. Let's just make sure that's nice and clean. And what I've got is I've got candied apple in oxide, and I've got crackling campfire in ink. Now you might be asking why I've got ink and oxide. Now the inks, they're translucent. The oxide have got an opaque element. So opaque means you can layer one on top of the other. Translucent means you can see through it. But the reason I'm using the translucent is because they are slightly more vibrant than the candied apple. So I thought I'd just mix them up. So I'm just going to apply the crackling campfire, which is the ink, and it's quite juicy, this ink is. So I'm just going to just apply the darker element, and it's like a burnt orange, exactly like you'd expect a crackling campfire. So just adding the dark just to the edges. And then what I'm going to do is take off that excess, and then I'm just going to spread out the colour. Just to spread that out a little bit. And it's a nice easy way to colour. It really does sort of work really well, and you can get rid of any lines. Then I'm going to go back in and just add a little bit more darkness. So again, like I did with the stamping and with any colouring, just adding layers of the colour just to make it pop a little bit more. Take off the excess and then just blend out those lines, just so those lines aren't visible. Just so it blends it out a little bit more. There we go. So then what I'm going to do is just mop that up. You could have added that extra ink, the candied apple, you could have added that to your background if you wanted to, the extra that was left. Now going to take a little bit of the oxide, which is the candied apple, and I'm just going to take a bit of that and just add it. Just pick up that and just add a little bit just to the very inside, just so it's at the bottom, just to give a little bit more depth, because it's slightly darker and it's opaque. And why have I missed one petal out? What is wrong with that one petal? Nobody knows. So just let me get my crackling campfire again, because obviously I've got a problem with that petal. So we'll just pick up that crackling campfire again, just a little bit, tip off the excess from my brush and then spread that out. Then pick a little bit more of the crackling campfire, just put a little bit more in there, get rid of the crackling campfire, and then pick up the fired brick and just add a little bit more depth. There we go. So if you want, you could add that excess ink to your backgrounds that you created when you mopped up the browns. So obviously this has got quite a bit of moisture in there now, but still nicely coloured with the inks and oxides. But when you place this against there, it works quite nicely with that pop, just that pop of colour. So what I'm going to do is grab some of my sisal nest. Where's my sisal nest? But before I do that, before I add my sisal nest, let's just place this stamp back. We're going to need that stamp again. Just going to take these hearts that are from the same stamp set as the text, which is Follow Your Own Path. And I'm just going to ink up with the black Nocturne ink. And I'm just taking a little bit of time just to make sure I've got a good layer of ink applied. And what I'm going to do is decide where I want. So I just want them there. So just add these hearts here. And I'm just going to allow that ink just to sit on there. Just give it time to rest. Just allow it to sit on there. Just give that time. There we go. And then what I want is I can add that flower just in between, so I can just have a look at that. Yes, I can. Just see that in between. So I'm now going to add my sisal nest, which I'll just cut off. That I'm going to get absolutely everywhere, but you're used to that by now. You know what I'm like with this sisal nest. Let's just put that back out the way. Just grab my 3D foam. So let's just put a little bit of adhesive just on the back, just to make sure that that 3D foam isn't going to fall off there. I think my glue must have a skin on, because it's not coming out very easy. So it must have a skin on. And we can't have that, can we? So I'm just going to use my little pin just to clear my glue. There we go. Let's just give that a wipe. we'll take this off. So this is just 3D foam. You can use your ultra thick gel. Just going to pick that up. Just add a little bit more adhesive. Still not coming out easy. I need sort of 3D muscles. I think I've got a clog. Ah, that's better. I've got a little bit of a clog. Oh, we can't have a clog, can we? So just add a bit of adhesive. Let's squash that down. And what it's best to do is wait for that adhesive to dry, or else it just moves. So we've got that sisal nest, which that nice creamy white will just add some interest to the design. There we go. So you can see that we're not going for anything too complicated, but I want to see if I've got a gold pen, and I've got that many pencil cases. I can't remember what's in where. Now let's see if we've got any gold. That looks like copper to me. There's gold. So I've just got a gold gel pen. Now I was going to add some gold leaf, but as I said before, I didn't want to add too many products. I didn't want you to have to search for too many products. So what I'm doing is I'm using a gold gel pen, and I'm just adding some touches. It's a gold jelly roll metallic, so I'm just adding some dots just around, just to add another little touch, so that when the recipient picks up the card, they can see that there's some shimmer on there. It's subtle, but there's some shimmer on there. I will try to lift that up just so that you can see the shimmer. So just going round and very therapeutic, just so that you can see. It's now got that touch of shimmer on the card. It's very difficult to pick it up on camera. I can see it as clear as anything. There we go. There's just touches of shimmer on the card. Let me just check. Where's my Posca pens? Do you know? What are these? I'm terrible, I am. Oh, look at this. I've got Posca pens here in metallic. So let's pick up this metallic one. Let's open it while we're here. Can't you spot the person that buys things and then hasn't used them yet? Mind you, I didn't buy them that long ago, to be honest. Just give that Posca pen a shake. And then you just hold the Posca pen down. You don't need to press too hard. You're just pumping the pen very, very slowly, and keeping it held down just until the ink begins to flow. Just until it flows. And it just takes a while, a couple of seconds. Let me just test that on there. Yep. So I'm just going to, you can just use your rulers if you wish. I'm just going to add some shimmer down the edge of the card. You can just use a ruler if you want, or just go down the card with your gold. So just hold it in place and press quite firmly. Don't dilly-dally with it. And just, do you know what we used to use? Oh, what were they called? What were the pens called? They used to have a bullet tip, and they'd have real sort of gold inside. They'd have a bullet tip. Oh, I've forgotten what they were called now. We had them years ago. So there you go. It's even better still with that metallic. I can't think what the pens were called. I used to have them years ago when I had the shop. No idea. Can't remember. They were like gold leaf pens. I don't know whether it was Woodware that used to do them or something. But just so that you can see. Can you see that shimmer? And you can see the shimmer just on the edges. Just so that you can see that. Just on the edges of the card. Right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my white gel pen, just add a little mark just on the hearts. Where's my, just going to add a little bit of shading. Obviously you will wait until your gold is dry. You won't do what I'm doing. So just adding a little bit of shading around there. Let's grab my, where's my water brush that does all the, there it is. Just going to blend that that's an Inktense pencil that I've used. Just an Inktense, a grey called China Ink. Just to blend it out a little bit, just to give it a little bit of shading. There we go. And then I want to add a word. Let's add a little word. So let's just move that out of the way. There we go. So we're just going to add this flower word from my Worded Petals, which is the same one as the flower stamp. Grab a piece of card. Let's move that out. Oh, I can see. Do you know what I can see now? A new obsession with metallic Posca pens. Nothing like some new products. There we go. Just stamp that flower wording. And I just think this pop of white will just add a little bit more life to the card. You could, if you wanted, emboss it in white on black card, but because I'm putting a black mat on my card, I don't really want to do that. Just want to add that pop of white. I just find these stamps so easy to use. So I can have, let me look at my thing in the, see, or do I want it there? Now I'm going to have it. Often look at things in the camera. Now you've got quite a cluster here, and you don't want it to get too cluttered without having any style about it. So I'm not going to add mine down the bottom. Sometimes I do add it down the bottom when the design's right, but because I've got quite a bit of that gold that we added, I don't want to over clutter it too much. So I'm just going to add, what have I got underneath there? Oh, I've got a lump of glue. This is what, that was the blockage. Shall I try again? There we go. So just add that flower. We'll give that a few seconds before we add any shading around there. So we'll do that. So we'll just put that away so I can get to my other stamp set. And I love using little bits from different stamp sets. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab the winged fragments. And what I want, let's just move this, I don't know why I've pulled the whole thing out. What I want is this half butterfly, or do I want that little butterfly? I don't want the half butterfly, what do you know? I don't want that. No, I think this is what I'm like all the time. Honestly, I'm dangerous. So what I'm going to do is first of all put the lid on my glue so we don't get any blockages again. And what I'm going to do is grab this little butterfly here. That's the stamp set was Winged Fragments, which is this stamp set. I don't think I showed it. So it's this stamp set. And I'm going to use this butterfly here. There's lots of little individual elements I can use on this stamp set. So I'm going to ink that butterfly up and I'm going to wing it without an acrylic block. I think I've got enough ink on there. Yes, we have. So let's just cut that butterfly out. So this is like my little embellishment. So instead of adding metal embellishments, I adore my metal embellishments. But instead of adding a metal embellishment, you can also use your stamps as embellishment pieces. So just using this butterfly for that exact reason as an embellishment piece. Just cut that out. And we are going to colour just to add a little bit more of those, that, you know, that reddy orange colour. But what I want to do, let's just put that back, is just decide where I'm putting my butterfly. So I'm probably going to put it there because it offers some balance to the flower sentiment. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, do I want to add the orange? It does look nice in just the white, but I think I am going to add a little touch of colour. Not too much, but I think I'm going to add a little touch of colour so that I've got the white and the orange. So let's grab that crackling campfire. So you hardly need any ink really, especially when it's as juicy as mine. So just grab a little bit and just, I hardly need any ink really. Take off the excess and then spread that out. But try and leave some of that white as well. Just leave a little bit of that white. Go back in and add a little bit of depth to your colour. Take off the excess and just spread that out so you've got rid of the edges. But don't go and colour it too much because you want to keep some of that white as well. Let's just... Now you can add your metal embellishments if you wish and add as many bits and pieces as you like, but I'm trying to just pare it down a little bit. Just hold that down and bend those wings. Of course, as I bend one, I flatten the other. Oh, I'm good like that. Just, there we go. But for me, I've now gone and wiped that ink up, but it's soaked into the card and I just need a little bit more. Yes, I know it's a bit pernickety, but it's just me because it's lost that intensity of colour. And that's just because there's quite a bit of water coming out of my water brush. So I'm just adding layers of colour. Just so that you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that to a black mat. Now if your craft sheet, your craft mat isn't clean, please remember to use a piece of copier paper just to place that onto your work surface, so then you don't get any messy marks and you're then not upset because you put a blob on your card or whatever, which, trust me, happens to us all. So just, as you know, I'm standing above the card just to make sure. I also made sure that that gold was dry. So just giving it time. And then I'm going to add this to a white card blank. Now the mat is 1/4 of an inch, and then the card 1/4 of an inch bigger still. So the card is 4 inches by 7.5. And you see, as soon as I sit down, I can't do it. I have to stand up to just get that aligned properly. Just to get it aligned a little bit. Just to make sure it's flat on there. Probably still going to add more ink to that butterfly. We've still got to do the shading around that flower, but around that flower sentiment. But doesn't the gold look lovely with a Posca pen? Oh yes. Right, just want one more bit of something. Just got my cut, tear and layer washi, and I've got a piece that's spare. In other words, what I mean is, when I ripped it, I stuck this bit back on because I didn't use it. So I just want a little bit of the cut, tear and layer washi just to add over my flower. I do like little touches of washi. Don't flatten your butterfly. Do you like how I talk to this butterfly every 2 minutes? Just a little touch. I need something a bit thinner than that. Let's have this thin bit here. I hope you spend as much time as me faffing with cards, because I do all the time. So just, there we go. So just so you can see, I've got a little bit of washi. Don't want those tiny bits. The saving bits and the saving bits. Right, so I need my little pen. Where's it gone? There it is. So that's dried now, and so's the gold, so I can add a little bit of shading just around my card. Yes, because all these little finishing touches are what make your card. Let's just grab a little bit of water, just so we've got that water, and just blend that out. Now obviously your oxides will react a little bit, because that's the nature of oxides, but you still get the shading. And just being a little bit more pernickety, a little bit more shading on this butterfly. It's mainly because my water brush has let too much water out and diluted the colour too much. So I've just dabbed my water brush onto a piece of kitchen roll, just so I get more intensity of colour. So yes, it's just me being fussy. Right, let's have a look at that card, just so you can see. Just tilt it to the side so you can see those splatters of gold and the gold edging on the card. You know, and I'm just trying to bring you something different, a different take each time with same stamp sets, just to give you lots of different ideas. But I have to say, a gold Posca pen is going to make a few appearances, I think. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed the video and the process, and I look forward to seeing your takes on the card. I'd just like to send my love to you all. Thank you all for your support and your comments, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.